The notification sound from my phone cut through the quiet of my apartment like a blade. I was sprawled across my couch, laptop balanced precariously on my chest, working on a freelance graphic design project that was due tomorrow morning. The blue glow of the screen had been my only companion for the past 4 hours, and my eyes felt dry and strained from staring at color palettes and typography choices. I glanced at the phone screen expecting another spam email or maybe a message from my mom asking if I was eating enough vegetables. Instead, I saw Jake's name, and my stomach did that familiar little flip it always did when he texted me. We had been best friends since college, bonding over late-night study sessions, terrible horror movies, and an inexplicable shared obsession with obscure indie bands that nobody else seemed to appreciate. The message was simple enough at first glance. "Hey man, you free to talk? That's something weird I need to tell you." But there was something about the tone that made me sit up straighter, closing my laptop and setting it aside on the coffee table. Jake wasn't typically one for dramatic announcements or cryptic messages. He was straightforward, almost brutally honest sometimes, which was one of the things I appreciated most about our friendship. I typed back quickly, my thumbs moving across the screen with practiced ease. "Yeah, what's up? Everything okay?" The response came back almost immediately, which told me he had been staring at his phone waiting for my reply. "Can I call you? This is too weird to text about." Now I was genuinely concerned. In the 5 years we had known each other, Jake had never prefaced a conversation with warnings about weirdness. He was the type of person who would casually mention that he had accidentally walked into the wrong apartment and had dinner with a stranger's family, treating it like the most normal thing in the world. For him to label something as weird meant it was probably going to be monumentally strange. My phone buzzed with an incoming call before I could even respond to his text. Jake's contact photo filled the screen, a ridiculous picture I had taken of him mid-laugh at a barbecue last summer, his head thrown back and his eyes crinkled with genuine joy. I swiped to answer, already preparing myself for whatever bizarre story he was about to share. "Okay." Before I say anything, Jake's voice came through the speaker, slightly breathless as if he had been pacing. "I need you to promise me that this isn't going to make things weird between us. Like, I'm serious, man. Our friendship means everything to me, and I don't want to mess it up over something stupid." I could hear the anxiety in his voice, which was unusual for Jake. He was typically confident to the point of being cocky, the kind of person who walked into any room like he owned it. This vulnerability was new territory for both of us. "Jake, whatever it is, just tell me. You know I'm not going anywhere." I tried to keep my voice steady and reassuring, even though my mind was racing through possibilities. Had he gotten into some kind of trouble? Was he moving away? Had something happened with his girlfriend, Sarah? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear him taking a deep breath. "Okay, so you know how Sarah and I have been together for like 2 years now, right? And things are good between us, really good. We've been talking about moving in together, maybe getting engaged next year." "Yeah, of course. You guys are great together." This was true. Sarah was perfect for Jake in all the obvious ways. She was smart, funny, ambitious, and she seemed to genuinely enjoy his terrible jokes and his tendency to quote obscure movies at inappropriate moments. I had always been happy for them, even if there was a small, selfish part of me that missed having Jake's undivided attention. Right, so that's what makes this so fucking weird. Jake's voice dropped lower, as if he was worried someone might overhear him. "We were talking the other night about fantasies and stuff, you know, trying to spice things up a little. And she asked me if I had ever thought about being with a guy." My heart started beating faster, though I couldn't quite articulate why. "Okay," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice neutral. "And the thing is, I have. I mean, I've never really thought of myself as anything other than straight, but lately I've been having these dreams, these thoughts, and they're all about you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and charged with meaning I wasn't sure I was ready to unpack. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, like the fundamental rules of our friendship had suddenly changed without warning. Jake continued talking, his words coming faster now as if he needed to get them all out before he lost his nerve. "I know how that sounds, and I know this is probably the last thing you expected to hear from me. But these aren't just random thoughts, you know? They're detailed, specific fantasies about what it would be like to be with you. And the weird part is, they don't feel wrong or strange when I'm having them. They feel natural, like something I actually want." I realized I had been holding my breath and forced myself to exhale slowly. "Jake, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. I just needed to tell someone, and you're the only person I trust with something like this. I've been carrying it around for weeks, and it's been driving me crazy. I keep analyzing every interaction we have, wondering if I'm acting different, if you can tell something has changed. Looking back on the past few weeks, I tried to remember if I had noticed anything unusual about Jake's behavior. There had been moments, I realized, when I had caught him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Times when our casual physical contact, the way we would bump shoulders while walking or how he would grab my arm when he was making a point, had seemed to linger just a fraction of a second longer than usual. "Have you talked to Sarah about this?" I asked, genuinely curious about how she had reacted to his confession. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, actually. That's the really weird part. She wasn't upset or jealous or anything like that. She said she had always wondered if I might be bisexual, and that she thought it was healthy for me to explore those feelings. She even suggested that maybe I should talk to you about it." This revelation hit me like a physical blow. Sarah, who I had always liked and respected, had essentially given Jake permission to pursue whatever this was between us. The implications of that were staggering and more than a little overwhelming. "She suggested you talk to me about wanting to sleep with me?" I tried to keep the incredulity out of my voice, but I wasn't entirely successful. Not in so many words, but yeah, basically. She said that if these feelings were as strong as I was describing, then maybe they were worth exploring. She trusts me, and she trusts you, and she knows that whatever happened wouldn't threaten our relationship. I stood up from the couch and started pacing around my living room, needing to move while I processed this information. My apartment suddenly felt too small, too confining for the magnitude of what we were discussing. "Jake, this is a lot to take in. I mean, you're talking about potentially changing the entire dynamic of our friendship, not to mention your relationship with Sarah." "I know, and I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. I'm not even sure what I'm asking for, to be honest. I just needed you to know that these feelings exist, and that they're not going away. If anything, they're getting stronger." There was something in his voice, a vulnerability and honesty that I had never heard before, that made my chest tighten with emotion. This was Jake, my best friend, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, telling me that he had been fantasizing about me. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this was complicated, that it could ruin everything we had built together. But there was another part of me, a part one had been carefully ignoring for months, that was thrilled by his confession. "What kind of fantasies?" The question slipped out before I could stop myself, and I immediately felt my face flush with embarrassment. Jake was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was lower, more intimate. "Do you really want to know?" "I think I need to know," I said, surprised by my own honesty. "They start different ways, but they always end the same. Sometimes we're hanging out like we always do, watching a movie or just talking, and something shifts between us. The air gets charged, you know? And then one of us makes a move, usually me, and suddenly we're kissing." I could picture it perfectly, which was both thrilling and terrifying. I had imagined similar scenarios myself, though I had always pushed those thoughts away, telling myself they were just random fantasies that didn't mean anything. "And then what happens?" I found myself asking, my voice barely above a whisper. "Then I touch you everywhere. I learn what makes you gasp, what makes you arch your back, what makes you say my name like it's the only word you remember. I think about what you would taste like, what sounds you would make when I made you come." The explicit nature of his words sent heat flooding through my body, and I had to sit down on the edge of my couch to steady myself. This wasn't just casual curiosity or experimentation he was describing. This was desire, raw and specific and directed entirely at me. "Jake," I said, but I didn't know how to finish the sentence. "I know this is crazy," he continued, "and I know I'm probably ruining everything by telling you this. But I can't keep pretending that these feelings don't exist. Every time I see you, every time we hang out, I find myself wondering what would happen if I just kissed you. What would you do? Would you kiss me back, or would you push me away?" The honest answer was that I would probably kiss him back, and that realization scared me more than anything else about this conversation. I had been attracted to Jake for longer than I cared to admit, but I had always assumed it was one-sided, that he was completely straight and completely unavailable. The possibility that he might actually want me back was something I had never seriously considered. "I need some time to think about this," I said finally, which felt like the most inadequate response possible but was the only honest thing I could offer. "Of course, take all the time you need. I just want you to know that whatever you decide, I'll respect it. If you want to pretend this conversation never happened, we can do that. If you want to explore this thing between us, I'm open to that too. And if you want something in between, we'll figure it out." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment in complete silence, staring at the wall and trying to process what had just happened. My best friend, who I had been secretly attracted to for years, had just confessed that he had been having sexual fantasies about me. His girlfriend, who I genuinely liked and respected, was apparently supportive of him exploring these feelings. And I was sitting here, alone in my apartment, with no idea what to do with any of this information. I tried to imagine what would happen if I called Jake back and told him I was interested. Would we meet up tomorrow and awkwardly try to figure out how to transition from friendship to something more physical? Would it be weird and uncomfortable, or would it feel as natural as he seemed to think it would? And what would happen afterward? Would we be able to go back to being just friends, or would everything be irreversibly changed? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that everything was already irreversibly changed. I couldn't unknow what Jake had told me, couldn't pretend that he hadn't described in vivid detail what he wanted to do to my body. Every future interaction we had would be colored by this knowledge, by the awareness that he saw me as more than just a friend. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our text history, looking at months of casual conversations with new eyes. Had there been signs that I had missed? Subtext that I had been too blind or too scared to acknowledge. There were moments, I realized, when our banter had felt charged with something more than friendship, when the teasing had an edge to it that I hadn't been able to identify at the time. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Hey, I know I just dropped a bomb on you, but I want you to know that I'm not going to be weird about this. Whatever you decide, we're good. I love you, man, and that's not going to change." I stared at those 3 words, "I love you," and wondered if they meant something different now than they had an hour ago. We had said them to each other before, usually at the end of phone calls or when one of us was going through a particularly difficult time. But now they felt loaded with possibility, with the potential for a meaning that went beyond friendship. I typed and deleted several responses, unable to find the right words to express the confusion and excitement and terror that were all competing for space in my chest. Finally, I settled on something simple and honest. "I love you too. Give me a couple days to process this, okay?" His response came back immediately. "Take all the time you need." Over the next 2 days, I found it almost impossible to concentrate on anything else. I would start working on a design project and find myself staring at the screen, thinking about Jake's hands and what they might feel like on my skin. I would try to watch television and end up analyzing every interaction we had ever had, looking for clues that his feelings had been developing over time. I called my sister Emma, who lived across the country and had always been my sounding board for complicated emotional situations. I didn't tell her the specific details, just that a close friend had expressed romantic interest in me, and I wasn't sure how to respond. "Is this someone you're attracted to?" she asked, cutting straight to the heart of the matter in the way that only siblings can. "Yes," I admitted, "but it's complicated." "It's only complicated if you make it complicated," she said. "If you're attracted to this person, and they're attracted to you, and you're both available, then what's the problem? What if it ruins our friendship?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "What if it doesn't? What if it makes your friendship even better? You can't make decisions based on worst-case scenarios, or you'll never take any risks at all." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about risk. My entire life, I had been cautious, careful, always choosing the safe option over the potentially rewarding but dangerous one. I had turned down job opportunities because they seemed too risky, avoided relationships because they might not work out, kept my feelings to myself rather than face the possibility of rejection. But Jake hadn't been cautious. He had taken an enormous risk by telling me about his fantasies, by putting our friendship on the line for the possibility of something more. The least I could do was be honest with him about my own feelings. I picked up my phone and typed out a text before I could lose my nerve. "Can you come over tomorrow night? I think we need to talk in person." His response came back within minutes. "Are you sure? I don't want to pressure you into anything." "I'm sure. Come over around 7. The next day passed in a blur of nervous energy and anticipation. I cleaned my apartment twice, changed my clothes 3 times, and generally behaved like I was preparing for a first date rather than a conversation with my best friend. By the time 7 o'clock rolled around, I was so wound up that I jumped when I heard Jake's familiar knock on my door. When I opened the door, he looked as nervous as I felt. His usually perfect hair was slightly mussed, as if he had been running his hands through it, and he was wearing a button-down shirt that I had never seen before. He looked good, really good, and I had to remind myself to breathe. "Hey," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside to let him in. "You want a beer or something?" "Yeah, that would be great." I went to the kitchen to grab 2 beers from the refrigerator, grateful for the momentary reprieve from the intensity of his gaze. When I returned to the living room, Jake was sitting on the edge of my couch, his hands clasped between his knees in a posture that screamed nervous tension. I handed him a beer and sat down on the opposite end of the couch, leaving space between us that felt both necessary and artificial. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us taking long sips of our beers and avoiding eye contact. So, Jake said finally, "Have you thought about what I told you?" "I haven't been able to think about anything else," I admitted. "Jake, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me get through it before you say anything, okay?" He nodded, his eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that made my stomach flutter. "I've been attracted to you for a long time. Probably since we first became friends, if I'm being completely honest. I never said anything because I assumed you were straight, and I didn't want to make things weird between us. But hearing that you've been having similar thoughts, that these feelings might be mutual, it changes everything." Jake's face broke into a slow smile, the first genuine expression of happiness I had seen from him since he had arrived. "Really? Really? But I'm scared, Jake. I'm scared that if we do this, if we cross this line, we won't be able to go back. And our friendship means too much to me to risk losing it over something that might just be physical curiosity." Jake set his beer down on the coffee table and shifted closer to me on the couch. "What if it's not just physical curiosity? What if it's something more than that?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if the reason these fantasies feel so natural, so right, is because my feelings for you go deeper than just wanting to sleep with you? What if I'm falling in love with you?" The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the breath out of my lungs. Jake was looking at me with an expression of such vulnerability and hope that I felt my heart break a little bit. "Jake," I whispered, not trusting my voice to remain steady. "I know it sounds crazy, and I know the timing is terrible with Sarah and everything, but I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship. It's more than that. It's always been more than that. I just didn't have the courage to admit it until now." I reached out and took his hand, intertwining our fingers in a gesture that felt both familiar and completely new. His skin was warm and slightly rough from his weekend hobby of rock climbing, and the contact sent electricity shooting up my arm. "What about Sarah?" I asked, because I needed to know that we weren't about to embark on something that would hurt an innocent person. "I talked to her again last night, told her that I was going to have this conversation with you. She said that she's known for a while that my feelings for you were more than platonic, and that she would rather I be honest about it than continue pretending otherwise. She's amazing, and she deserves someone who can love her completely, without reservation. That's not me, not anymore." "Are you breaking up with her?" "We're taking a break while I figure out what I want." She suggested it, actually. She said that if I don't explore these feelings now, I'll always wonder what might have been, and that's not fair to either of us. I squeezed his hand, overwhelmed by the generosity and wisdom of a woman I had always respected but now admired even more. "She's incredible." "She is. And she likes you, which makes this easier somehow. She said that if I was going to fall for someone else, she was glad it was you because she knows you're a good person who won't hurt me intentionally." We sat there for a moment, hands clasped, both of us processing the magnitude of what we were discussing. The air between us felt charged with possibility, with the potential for something beautiful and terrifying and life-changing. "So what happens now?" I asked. Jake shifted even closer to me, close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Now I ask if I can kiss you, and you tell me yes or no." My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "And if I say yes? Then we figure out what this is between us, one step at a time. No pressure, no expectations, just honesty and communication and seeing where this takes us." I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of doubt or uncertainty, but all I saw was hope and desire and something that looked a lot like love. "Yes," I whispered. Jake's smile was radiant as he leaned in and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if he was giving me the opportunity to change my mind. But when I kissed him back, when I brought my free hand up to cup the back of his neck, he deepened the kiss with a soft groan that sent heat flooding through my entire body. Kissing Jake felt like coming home and embarking on an adventure at the same time. His lips were soft and warm, and he tasted like beer and something uniquely him that I wanted to memorize. When he ran his tongue along my lower lip, I opened my mouth to him without hesitation, and the first touch of his tongue against mine made me dizzy with want. We kissed for what felt like hours, exploring each other with a combination of tenderness and hunger that left me breathless. Jake's hands found their way into my hair, and I could feel the calluses on his fingertips as he traced the line of my jaw. Every touch sent sparks through my nervous system, and I found myself making soft sounds of pleasure that I couldn't control. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathing hard. Jake rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed and his lips slightly swollen from our kisses. Wow, he breathed. Yeah, wow, I agreed, my voice hoarse with emotion. Jake pulled back slightly so he could look at me, his eyes searching my face as if he was trying to memorize every detail. How do you feel? Are you okay? I considered the question seriously. How did I feel? Overwhelmed, certainly. Excited and terrified in equal measure. But underneath all of that was a sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place in a way that I hadn't expected, but that felt inevitable in retrospect. I feel like we should have done this a long time ago, I said honestly. Jake's smile was brilliant. I feel like we did it at exactly the right time. He was probably right. If we had acted on these feelings earlier, when we were both less mature and less sure of ourselves, it might have ended badly. But now, with years of friendship as our foundation and the wisdom that comes with experience, we had a real chance of making this work. What happens next? I asked, because I genuinely didn't know the protocol for transitioning from best friends to something more. Whatever feels right, Jake said, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone with infinite gentleness. We don't have to rush into anything. We can take this as slow as you want. But I didn't want to take it slow. I had been waiting for this, dreaming about this, for longer than I cared to admit, and now that it was finally happening, I wanted to experience all of it. I wanted to learn what Jake's skin felt like under my hands, wanted to discover all the ways I could make him gasp and moan and say my name like a prayer. What if I don't want to take it slow? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake's eyes darkened with desire, and I could see him swallow hard. Then we don't take it slow. I leaned in and kissed him again, this time with more urgency, more intention. Jake responded immediately, his hands gripping my shoulders as he pulled me closer. The kiss was deeper this time, hungrier, and when I nipped at his lower lip, he made a sound that went straight to my core. Bedroom? Jake asked against my lips, and I nodded without hesitation. We stood up together, and Jake took my hand as I led him down the hallway to my bedroom. My heart was pounding with anticipation and nerves, but when I looked at Jake, saw the trust and desire in his eyes, all my anxiety melted away. This was Jake, my best friend, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world. Whatever happened between us, it would be good because it was us. My bedroom was dimly lit by the streetlight outside my window, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. Jake looked around, taking in the familiar space that he had been in dozens of times before but never in this context. I used to fantasize about this, he said quietly, his voice filled with wonder. Being here with you like this. What did you imagine? I asked, stepping closer to him. Jake's hands found my waist, his thumbs stroking over the fabric of my shirt. I imagined undressing you slowly, learning every inch of your body. I imagined making you feel so good that you forgot your own name. His words sent heat pooling low in my belly, and I had to grip his shoulders to steady myself. Jake, I breathed. Can I? He asked, his hands moving to the hem of my shirt. Can I undress you? I nodded, not trusting my voice, and Jake slowly lifted my shirt over my head. His eyes roamed over my chest with an expression of such hunger and appreciation that I felt beautiful under his gaze. When he leaned down to press a kiss to the hollow of my throat, I gasped and arched into him. You're so beautiful, he murmured against my skin, his lips trailing down to my collarbone. I've wanted to touch you like this for so long. His hands were everywhere, mapping the contours of my chest and shoulders with a reverence that made my knees weak. When his thumb brushed over my nipple, I couldn't suppress the moan that escaped my lips. I love the sounds you make, Jake said, his voice rough with desire. I want to hear all of them. I reached for the buttons of his shirt, my fingers fumbling slightly with nerves and excitement. Jake stood still and let me work, his eyes never leaving my face as I slowly revealed the chest that I had seen countless times at the beach or the gym but never been allowed to touch. When his shirt fell to the floor, I ran my hands over his chest, marveling at the feel of his skin under my palms. Jake was lean and strong, with just enough muscle definition to make my mouth water. I leaned in and pressed a kiss to his sternum, tasting the salt of his skin and breathing in his familiar scent. God, that feels good, Jake groaned, his hands tangling in my hair. We took our time exploring each other, kissing and touching with a combination of tenderness and passion that left us both breathless. Every caress was a revelation, every kiss a promise of more to come. When Jake's hands moved to the button of my jeans, I didn't hesitate to give him permission to continue. Soon we were both naked, standing in the golden light of my bedroom and drinking in the sight of each other. Jake was beautiful, all lean lines and smooth skin, and the way he was looking at me made me feel like the most desirable person in the world. Come here, I said, reaching for him, and Jake came willingly into my arms. We fell onto my bed together, a tangle of limbs and desperate kisses. Jake's hands were everywhere, touching and exploring with an enthusiasm that left me gasping. When his mouth followed the path of his hands, trailing kisses down my chest and stomach, I thought I might die from the intensity of the sensation. "Is this okay?" he asked, his breath hot against my skin. "More than okay," I managed to say, my voice strained with pleasure. Jake's mouth was magic, and he seemed determined to fulfill every promise he had made during our phone conversation. He learned exactly what made me gasp, what made me arch my back, what made me say his name like it was the only word I remembered. And when he finally took me into his mouth, the sensation was so intense that I had to grip the sheets to keep from floating away entirely. "Jake, I'm not going to last," I warned him, but he just hummed around me in response, the vibration sending me over the edge with a cry that I was sure the neighbors could hear. Afterward, as I lay there trying to remember how to breathe, Jake crawled back up my body and kissed me deeply. I could taste myself on his lips, and the intimacy of it made my chest tight with emotion. "That was incredible," I said when I could finally speak. Jake smiled, looking pleased with himself. That was just the beginning. I rolled us over so that I was on top, straddling his hips and looking down at his beautiful face. "My turn," I said, and Jake's eyes widened with anticipation. I took my time with him, just as he had with me, exploring every inch of his body with my hands and mouth. Jake was responsive and vocal, his hands gripping my shoulders and his head thrown back in pleasure as I worshipped him with my tongue. When I finally took him into my mouth, he made a sound that was half moan, half sob, and I knew I would never forget the way he looked in that moment, completely undone by pleasure. When it was over, we lay together in my bed, our bodies intertwined and our breathing slowly returning to normal. Jake's head was on my chest, and I could feel his heartbeat against my ribs. The room was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and our own soft breathing. "That was better than any fantasy I ever had," Jake said quietly, his fingers tracing patterns on my skin. "Yeah, it was pretty amazing," I agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. We lay there in comfortable silence for a while, both of us processing what had just happened between us. It felt surreal, like something I might have dreamed, but the weight of Jake's body against mine and the lingering taste of him on my lips were proof that it was very real. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, tilting his head up to look at me. "I'm thinking about how different everything is now," I said honestly, "and how right it feels, even though it should probably feel weird or complicated." Jake smiled. "It doesn't feel weird to me either. It feels like something that was always supposed to happen, like we were just waiting for the right moment." "Do you think Sarah was right about you being bisexual?" Jake considered the question seriously. "I think labels are less important than feelings. I know that I'm attracted to women, and I know that I'm attracted to you. Whether that makes me bisexual or pansexual or just Jake, I don't really care. What matters is that this feels right." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The specifics of sexual orientation seemed less important than the connection we had discovered between us, the way our bodies fit together like they had been designed for each other. "I should probably call Sarah tomorrow," Jake said, a note of sadness creeping into his voice. "Let her know that we're going to make this break permanent." "Are you sure that's what you want?" I asked, because I needed to know that he wasn't making this decision in the heat of the moment. Jake lifted his head and looked at me with complete seriousness. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. What we just shared, what I feel for you, it's not something I can ignore or push aside. I want to be with you, really be with you, and that means ending things with Sarah properly." The conviction in his voice made my heart swell with happiness and relief. "What about us? What do we tell people?" "We tell them the truth. That we're together, that we're happy, and that anyone who has a problem with it can mind their own business." Jake grinned. "Although I suspect most people won't be that surprised. Emma always said she thought there was something between us." "Emma said that?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah, she mentioned it to me a few months ago at your birthday party. Said she could see the way we looked at each other when we thought no one was watching." I thought back to my birthday party, trying to remember any particularly charged moments between Jake and me. There had been several, I realized, times when our eyes had met across the room and held for just a beat too long, when our casual touches had lingered with unspoken meaning. "Maybe we weren't as subtle as we thought we were," I said. "Maybe we didn't want to be as subtle as we thought we did," Jake replied, and I had to admit he might be right. We talked for hours, lying naked in my bed and sharing thoughts and feelings that we had kept hidden for years. Jake told me about the first time he had realized he was attracted to me, during a camping trip when he had watched me swimming in a lake and felt something shift inside him. I told him about the dreams I had been having, dreams that were remarkably similar to the fantasies he had described. As the night wore on, we made love again, this time slower and more tender, learning each other's bodies with careful attention and infinite patience. Every touch was a conversation, every kiss a promise, and when we finally fell asleep in each other's arms, I felt more complete than I had in years. I woke up the next morning to the feeling of Jake's lips pressing soft kisses to my shoulder. Sunlight was streaming through my bedroom window, and I could hear birds singing outside. For a moment, I wondered if the previous night had been a dream, but then Jake's arm tightened around my waist, and I knew it had been beautifully, wonderfully real. "Good morning," Jake murmured against my skin, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning," I replied, turning in his arms so I could see his face. Jake looked different in the morning light, softer somehow, with his hair mussed and his eyes still heavy with sleep. But there was something else too, a contentment that I had never seen in him before, as if he had finally found something he had been searching for without even realizing it. "Any regrets?" he asked, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. "None," I said immediately, and I meant it. "You. Only that we waited so long to do this," Jake replied, leaning in to kiss me softly. We spent the morning in bed, making love and talking and simply enjoying the luxury of being together without pretense or reservation. It felt natural and right in a way that surprised me with its intensity. This wasn't just physical attraction or experimentation. This was love, deep and real and transformative. Around noon, Jake's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. He showed me the message, which simply said, "I hope you're happy. You deserve to be." Jake typed back, "Thank you for understanding. You're amazing, and you deserve someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved." Her response came back immediately. "I know, and I think you found someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved too. Take care of each other." I felt tears prick at my eyes as I read the exchange. Sarah's grace and generosity in the face of what must have been a difficult situation was humbling and beautiful. "She really is incredible," I said. "She is. And she's going to find someone amazing who can give her everything she wants," Jake replied. "But that person isn't me. I know that now." We spent the rest of the day together, cooking breakfast and watching movies and generally behaving like the couple we had apparently always been meant to be. Everything felt easy and natural, as if we had simply added a physical dimension to a relationship that had always been built on love and trust and deep emotional connection. That evening, as we sat on my couch with Jake's head in my lap, I found myself thinking about the future. There would be challenges, certainly. Coming out to friends and family, navigating the transition from friendship to romantic relationship, figuring out practical things like living arrangements and shared finances. But for the first time in my life, those challenges felt manageable because I wouldn't be facing them alone. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, looking up at me with those beautiful brown eyes. "I'm thinking about how lucky we are," I said, running my fingers through his hair. "How many people get to fall in love with their best friend?" Jake's smile was radiant. "Not many. We're pretty special, aren't we?" "Yeah, we are." As the sun set outside my window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I realized that this was just the beginning of our story. We had taken the first step into uncharted territory, guided by nothing more than love and trust and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. Jake had been right when he said that his fantasies about me weren't just physical curiosity. They had been a glimpse into a future that neither of us had dared to imagine but both of us had secretly wanted. And now that future was ours to create, one day at a time, one kiss at a time, one moment of perfect understanding at a time. "I love you," I said, the words feeling both familiar and completely new. "I love you too," Jake replied, reaching up to cup my face in his hands. More than I ever thought possible. And as he pulled me down for another kiss, I knew that whatever happened next, whatever challenges we faced or joys we discovered, we would face them together. Because sometimes the best things in life come disguised as complications, and sometimes the person you're meant to be with has been right there beside you all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves as your perfect match. The fantasy had become reality, and reality was more beautiful than either of us had ever dared to dream.